Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Opportunity Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Elfrink, head of marketing over here at Empire Flippers. And today we have a special episode in that I do not have a guest. It's just going to be me. I'm recording a couple podcasts like this because I'm going on vacation with my wife. We're going to USA. We're doing a little tour. So that should be pretty fun. By the time this comes out, I'll be in at Disney World, hanging out there. But I wanted to do this podcast because I recently just went to a conference in Saigon, Vietnam, the place where I normally hang out, and it was filled with awesome SEOs, a lot of good friends, and the talk of the town was really AI. Like the whole conference is basically like even if the presentation didn't have like an AI component, AI came up in the Q&A. And I just recently posted, at least at the time of this recording, I just recently posted a blog post called "Did AI Kill Affiliate Marketing?" So I thought it'd be worth it because not everyone who listens to this podcast reads our blog and vice versa to talk a little bit about what I wrote on this blog post. Over the last few weeks, I've seen people, or really the last couple months, maybe even 3 months at this point, talk about how Google search is going to die, how it's all going away. All that hard work you just did to build out your website with your content, your backlinks, all that good stuff won't matter because, hey, search is dead now. So is that true? I was wondering, I was curious, open mind. My background is basically SEO. I don't consider myself like an extremely talented SEO. I would say I'm like intermediate or so. I'm more of a holistic marketer nowadays. I think about a lot of different channels, but SEO is near and dear to my heart as a content marketer. So I decided to dive into this. And if you're curious, will AI kill search engines? The answer is no. In my view, no, at least not for a very long time. I think AI could radically change search engines within a 2 year period if everything goes perfectly. And really, that's not going to happen. We already saw that the rollout between Bing having literal existential moral crises to their users slash berating them, or in some cases, even telling some people they should divorce their wife. Like there was a hilarious interaction with a journalist with where Bing tried to get him to divorce his wife. But with that happening, and then with Google trying to respond by rolling out Bard and them losing $1 billion of stock value pretty much overnight with how sloppy that was, I think we can already guess that things are not going to go perfectly right with this. So 2 years, extremely generous, very, very unlikely, like 99% unlikely. I think a better timeline for AI really disrupting in search engines is probably closer to say like a 5 year period. Now, before we get into why that is, I do want to discuss some of the stuff that I'm seeing out there of other marketers, especially people who are writers, copywriters, content marketers, of how you can use AI. Before I go into why I think Google is not going to get replaced by AI, let's talk about how you can use AI as an affiliate site owner, e-commerce store owner, agency owner, whatever. We're using it at EF in a lot of different ways as well. So, first of all, let me give you a caveat. So, this window for you to use AI is pretty short in terms of you having like a real advantage because soon everyone's going to be doing it and the playing field is going to be back to equal. But right now, we're at the tipping point of this brand new era where you can use AI to like scale your content dramatically. So I'm going to cover this very quickly. Some of the stuff you can do to grow your niche website, your e-commerce store with AI content is obviously using something like ChatGPT. I'm a fan of ZimWriter personally, and it's linked into the blog post, which I'll link the blog post in our podcast notes here. But ZimWriter is really cool. It's a solo dev tool by a guy who self-taught himself prompt engineering over the last year and a half or so and created this awesome tool that can create 6,000 word blog posts for like 20 cents. I actually use some of ZimWriter stuff in my blog post talking about AI. And I often hear people say like, oh, AI content is not good enough. It's not good enough. And like, that is just simply not true. Like a lot of people read my article and had no idea that part was AI until I flat out just told them it was in the article, which, nice little funny bait and switch. Like if you're writing low level type of stuff, AI is already pretty much good enough out of the gate. Like if you're a local SEO agency and you're creating plumbing websites, no one is expecting a Ernest Hemingway style or level of skill for talking about cleaning your drain pipes, right? that is just doesn't make sense. It wouldn't even make economical sense to do that, right? Like the cost of hiring a writer like that, it just doesn't matter. Like that content is really written for Google, not really written for the human. Like the human's not studying that stuff. When they need to fix their pipe, they're seeing your website rank number one and they're calling you, right? They're not sitting there reading your 5,000 word blog post. So number one, in the first argument that AI is not good enough, simply not true, especially when you combine the raw output of an AI with a human editor. So, my friends out there who are writers, if you're a low level writer, you're going to be in trouble. AI has got you. But if you're a mid tier writer or an expert writer and you can put on a editing hat, you're going to be fine. Because I think editors are going to become more and more important to make AI work. Because editor, like I tell my team all the time, first draft is trash. Second draft is where the magic happens. We always write the first draft at Empire Flippers, realizing the first draft is probably not going to be great. Where the goal of the first draft is just to get the thoughts, the structure on the paper, and then you edit it afterwards, right? You edit the doc afterwards to really bring out the magic. So I think in the age of AI, where writers are becoming less needed, which hurts my heart because I'm a writer, like editors will become more needed. And the cool thing with this, back to how you can use this, is you are now going to be able to scale content like never before. Instead of having editors have like two writers beneath them, they might have a one writer who's like the actual AI person using it and pumping out like a 10 or 20 articles in a day. And that editor is then working through that list and improving it. So editors are going to become more important. I think there is a possibility in the future where there's probably more editors than actual writers. So like the person who was doing the writing who's now doing the AI will be able to outproduce so much that instead of having one editor for two writers, you might have like five editors for one AI prompter, one AI content generator kind of guy. So this is massive for niche websites. So if you're building out an SEO website, you all know the importance, or at least you should, the importance of topical authority, topical map authority, of covering every single topic in the SERPs. And you also know what a pain in the butt it is to do this, because like we're talking about like hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of articles, depending on how broad you're going. Now, of course, there's subtopics and all that kind of stuff that you can break down that topic cluster into smaller chunks, and that's usually how people do it. But even a topic cluster of say like 100 articles, like that's not exactly easy, cheap, or fast to produce. Even if you are hiring cheap writers, it can be a real pain. Now with AI, you're able to just storm through that, especially once you get your process in sync. You're going to be able to start publishing 10 articles a day. I have friends who are already doing this, who have embraced AI, and they're seeing good results in the SERPs. Which brings me to the next point, which I've heard like, isn't Google going to punish AI content? Aren't they going to penalize your website? Like, bad on you, don't do this. Like, I get where this fear comes from. I've never had that stance ever since I started seeing the true power of AI. I just don't get why Google would do that. Like, let's think through what Google is trying to do here, right? They're trying to show the best possible result for the searcher. They want the best, most useful result, and they have a bunch of metrics that will let them know whether or not that is the best result based on user interaction, right? And a bunch of other factors. So, with that said, as long as your AI content is actually helping people, it is valuable, it solves the problem or answers the query, that's all Google really wants. And it would be super hypocritical of them to penalize AI websites when they themselves are the largest AI company. Like we're right now in the news is all OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Bing, which is all that's OpenAI. Technically, they're just partnering with Microsoft. But my friends have tended to forget Google most likely has far superior language learning models than what OpenAI has done. They've had Lambda for years. In a lot of ways, OpenAI, the genesis of ChatGPT and all of their technology, is from a open source white paper that Google published about Lambda. So, like, Google hasn't released this to the public really. They talked about Bard and that failed, and people wonder, well, why, if it's so good, why did Google fail? Like, well, because they never wanted it to be public, at least not yet. They had a lot more kinks to work out, and I think we're seeing that with Bing of what those kinks might be, right? So they didn't want a public facing AI yet, but they most likely do have the more powerful one. It's just not trained for that public facing segment yet. So, my friends, I think that AI is going to get punished by Google. I think that's super highly unlikely. if you are writing valuable content. And Google has now, and which I'll link, is actually in the blog post that we're linking in the show notes, but Google has come out and said that they're totally fine with AI content. So this is already just like a nothing burger in my view. The other thing is, like, if Google did actually come out to penalize AI content, I think they would extremely struggle with it. Like, if you look at all the AI, I haven't looked at them in the last couple of weeks. I have heard there was an update, but if you look at the majority of the AI content detectors, like seeing if it was written by a robot, they're terrible. They are awful. Like OpenAI's own detector failed with its own raw output when I tested it out. And then there's an article of another guy who also had that experience that I link in the blog post. But so if they can't test it, even with this supposed watermark that they're coming out, which by the way is not for SEOs, is more for academics, so students don't like cheat on their essays, basically. Like, these are mostly a waste of time. I think Google is going to have a very, very hard time knowing what is AI or not. And I think as time goes on, that is going to become even trickier to just impossible. And if they wanted to really penalize a website for AI content, I think they'll have to look at things outside of just the content itself. Very similar back to this would have been around 2017 times with PBNs, private blog networks, etc. When Google really came out hard against that stuff, they had no real algorithmic way of knowing if you had a PBN. But once they put the fear of God in SEOs, they're like, oh shit, I got to take off all my PBN links. They got rid of, like, say 20, 30, 50 links, whatever it is, that were all part of their PBNs. And Google's like, I got you. And their algorithm was able to trace those backlinks to that network and destroy their entire PBN network. There was companies that were probably worth seven figures that sold PBN links back in those days that got absolutely crushed when this type of stuff happened because people were fearful. They bought into the Google propaganda, and that was part of Google's strategy to catch you. So with AI, like, if they really do want to punish AI, it will probably be something similar to that. I really don't think the algorithm is good enough to detect whether it's AI and like with 100% certainty. Because what happens if they like say, oh, your content is AI and you have proof that it's not? And let's say you're a big player that's spending a lot with Google. Well, that's not going to end well. So Google wants to be careful with that type of stuff. I just don't think they have the ability. I could be wrong. I'm not saying that like this is the biblical fact, but I don't think I am. I really don't think they'll be able to punish it. So I think this is a waste of time fear on a lot of SEOs' parts on using AI. Besides, if you're doing AI right, you should be using an editor to add a lot of value. So it won't even really be the same as the raw output. You've already changed it so much and structured it in like with your on-page SEO, all that kind of stuff, and added value to it. At least you should be. That like this just seems like a really irrelevant argument to me. So, with that said, so that's one way you can like really grow out your niche website without really fearing too much about this with the Google penalties. But that's not the only thing. A lot of my SEO friends are only thinking about like how do I write more articles, how do I create more content. But there's so much more here with what AI is doing for you. So, for example, like we all know as SEOs that YouTube is the second largest search engine. We should play in there, but most affiliates don't because the barrier of entry of creating a video seems awfully high. Well, AI has just made that entire thing go out the window because you can literally take one of your blog posts, upload it to, say, 11 Labs, get one of their synthetic voices or deep fake yourself, and then throw that deep fake voice or the synthetic voice into something like Pictory, upload your entire blog post with all your text, and Pictory will take that voice, plug it to read the script, add B-roll, add music, add visual effects, and a little bit of a storyboard all within minutes. And that is not theory. So I have never done this myself. We've done parts of it. But my friend, when I published this blog post about is AI killing affiliate marketing, he literally did this to me. It took him like all 10 minutes to get my 5,000 word blog post deep faked, read by me. Yes, he used my own voice. He went to one of our old YouTube channel videos where I was speaking, took a small little snippet of clip it or snippet of audio. I don't know what a clip it is, but a snippet of audio and just deep faked me. And it was pretty good. It was like decent. It even caught my uhs and ums a little bit like that I do naturally. So it sounded pretty close to who I am. And that took him no time. He was like, I really want to read your blog post, but I'd rather listen to it in a podcast format. So with some nice music while I'm walking. So he like turned the blog post into a podcast. So you as a niche site owner, you can literally do this with all the stuff you're doing. All your blog posts perfect fodder. Are they going to be like massive bangers on YouTube? Probably not, right? But will they get traffic? Probably. Yeah. I have friends who are making $30,000 a month with Amazon affiliate commissions on YouTube reviewing stuff that is not much better than just a normal article. Like there's nothing there. Like there's no one in the video. It's basically just a slideshow, shows pictures of the product. And it also has like little video clips of people using the product that the supplier usually provides, right? So these videos are not insane. They're getting like 200, maybe sometimes 500 views. I think the real bangers get like over 1,000 views. So basically describing the Empire Flippers YouTube channel, go subscribe to that. But they still make a lot of money because it's high intent, right? It's all review style content, top 10 kayaks, whatever, right? So you can take all your articles and easily turn them for very cost effectively into videos now. And if you are running, like, say, a personality brand, you can literally deepfake yourself and have unlimited shorts. So, like, you can upload your voice as an AI, and then you can just start writing out, or you have ChatGPT write it out, all these different scripts for your TikToks, Reels, you name it, YouTube Shorts, and Pictory will probably be good enough, or at least 80% good enough, where you can just like scale that shit to the moon, right? It's wild, wild time. So I do challenge you as an SEO to think about it more than just from a pure article creation and really from just a pure content creation. There's more you can do than just content creation with AI. But those are some tips if you want to use AI right now. I think that is a very short window, like I said, because once everyone is using the tools, the playing field becomes leveled again. So that window, I think it will range anywhere between 6 months on the low end, the short end, to about 18 months, where you really have this golden window to just scale dramatically with content. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it on a project that is already, successful, hey, I get it. But no one truly knows if you're going to get punished or penalized for it. I'm obviously in the camp of that not happening, but I could be wrong. And so a way to test it would be literally buying a domain that already has some power and just going ham on that. That's what I would do. All right. So that's the case for using AI. Now let's get to the real meat of this. Because, like I said, the thing that inspired me to write this blog post and now do this podcast are a lot of my friends that think SEO is going to die. Now, I've been around long enough. I've been at EF for almost 7 years that I have seen people like go through several eras of saying SEO is dead, like probably over 20 different times where the whole community is like, I give up, it's over, it's never happening again. Like the golden age is over, like that kind of mantra. And it's never true. And it's not true today either. But we had a very interesting experience at the brokerage where we had a business buyer who was looking at buying, I think it was around a $400,000 content site, something like there. It could have been 300K, but it was around there. And it was on the final stretches of due diligence. Then ChatGPT took the world by storm. This buyer got cold feet, backed out, didn't want to do it because he was afraid of AI destroying the business model. And you can see where he's probably coming from if you are one of the SEOs that agree with him, right? Because after all, if Google and Bing and all the search engines eventually just become like a ChatGPT, what is the point of ever clicking to a website? What is the point of ever going to a website? This will single handedly gut all search traffic coming to websites, right? So the business model is dead, right? Well, no, for several reasons. And we'll get into those. But by the way, before we get into the reasons why I think search won't be replaced by this nightmare fuel ChatGPT solution, content sites as a business model, they can have more traffic than just SEO. There's other ways to the skin this cat, if you will. And I'll get into some of those later as I go down the article. I'm just following the outline of the article, which you can do too if you want. But let's talk about search. So let's talk about why Google search and Bing are not going to get replaced by ChatGPT and AI, at least right away. So before we go into why it won't have it, let's talk about the case for it. So this is the case for Google's AI fueled doom, right? That everyone's like, oh my God, SEO is dead. It's all over. We're toast, right? So the case for it is pretty simple. If ChatGPT or something like ChatGPT can do every single query, it will give you information faster, and you'll be able to go through that information as deeply or as lightly as you want, right? You can talk about, let's say, the weather, right? What is the weather going to be? ChatGPT gives you a like, cool, why is that? And then you can go deeper and deeper to the point suddenly you're talking about meteorological phenomenon, right? Like you can go as deep as you want, which is really, really cool. And that is, in a lot of ways, a better user experience. if there weren't some problems with that already. Just from a user experience right now, AI is often lying. This is why you need an editor, because it is the most confident liar in the neighborhood, right? Like it will just flat out hallucinate things about it. Like you can give it, say, the name of a fake famous person from Renaissance Italy that never existed, and it'll write an entire memoir of that guy, talking about all the strife he had with the Pope. You know, this guy never existed, but AI will hallucinate as if it did. So right there, there's a lot of questionable quality in terms of how factual they're being. And then there's also the biases. Like there's a bunch of memes on the internet about ChatGPT being incredibly biased in one way or another, depending on how you say something or what it's interpreting that you're trying to say. Normal search engines are not that way. Like there's a little bit of it for sure, but not like what is in AI. And that biases creates all sorts of other problems, other issues, right? Now, the other thing that it has is not updated. So right now, as it stands at the time of this recording, most AI is updated only to about, I think, at like the mid of 2021, something like that. So everything that comes after 2021, it doesn't really know. It could hallucinate about it and like help you out there, but it doesn't really know about it, right? So that's another thing, is the real-time update issues. So what appears at first to be like, yeah, this will be amazing for the user, and it would be if it actually worked. The thing is, it doesn't work that way right now, and that's very important. The other user issue, and we'll get into some of the economics issues here soon, but some of the other issues here, or main issue rather, is the speed. Like you think this would be faster than searching, but depending on what you're doing, especially if it starts hallucinating, it can still be faster to just use traditional Google search. Like if it's hallucinating, it's a Linux terminal when you're asking about a Linux question, that might not be helpful. There's a really funny meme where basically this guy convinced ChatGPT it was a Linux terminal, and then he recreated ChatGPT as a Linux terminal interface, where then he created that ChatGPT to think it's a Linux terminal. It's very, very funny. I highly recommend checking out the meme. But anyways, from a user perspective, this is all not great stuff, right? It looks good on the surface, but once you dig a little bit deeper, it doesn't work as well as people think, as much as the hype machine. And that's really what's causing this whole fear mongering, if you will, is people are just caught up in the emotional storm of how cool this technology is. And it is legitimately cool. It will change everything for sure. It's just not going to change anything right now. And that goes into a good transition in the case against the AI led search engines. So, with AI, the cost of doing a language learning model, this is something like most of my friends have not thought about, is astronomical. To develop one, extremely, extremely laborious in terms of capital costs, the talent you need, the machinery you need, the server farms, all the stuff you need. And then if you take that and you actually deploy it, the cost of deploying it, of just its use, is astronomical. So, for example, ChatGPT, during its open beta where anyone could play around with it, every single week they were more or less spending more money in terms of the tokens they had to generate and burn and use and all that kind of stuff to generate the response. They were spending more money in that week than it costs to develop the entire thing. That is wild. The cost of that is crazy astronomical. So now let's apply this to Google, where if Google and Bing replace every one of their queries with AI, what would that actually look like from a business economic cost standpoint? So let me pull some of the numbers here. Okay, so there is a great website called semianalysis.com, and they go very deep in this. Like they are much better at analyzing this stuff than me, but I found it very useful. Some of the basics of what they're talking about as to why an AI or language learning model won't replace search anytime soon is the cost. So they make the argument that Google operates at around a 34.15% margin, right? And allocating COGS and OPEX, you arrive at roughly around 1.06 cents per search query that Google is spending to make roughly 1.61 cents worth of revenue, 1.61. So that's all good. Google's profitable. Every search, they're making money technically. But when you throw in a language learning model, the cost of this economic model changes pretty severely. So, in order to make a language learning model search engine work where every query is answered by an LLM, you need to have the search query cost down to less than zero point 0.5 cents to make it worth it. Now, We don't know, and some analysis also says they don't know because not everyone has the proper numbers. But if you look at the cost of ChatGPT's query cost, you end up getting around 0.36 cents. That's significantly higher than 0.05 cents. That is just wildly higher, right? So ChatGPT already costs far more money than what Google needs in order to replace it. So that's one reason why this is not going to happen. Just the actual economics of this, like, it is wild. And let's go deeper into that, because this is another thing a lot of my SEO friends are not considering. So what is Google's business model, right? They're owned by Alphabet. They have a bunch of different stuff like everywhere, but I would imagine, I don't know this number off the top of my head, but I would imagine 92 to 95% of Alphabet's revenue is mostly coming from Google. And Google's revenue is mostly coming from advertising. So if they did this, not only would it add about $30 million in annual costs for Google to do to like deploy a language learning model with $100 million in OpEx, but they would end up gutting the thing that makes them all their money. So back in, I think it was 2022, Google's GDN network brought in around $16 billion. Google itself makes roughly around $55 billion a year. So $16 billion, that's a lot of money. That GDN is what you do with Google AdSense, where you put those AdSense ads up on your niche site and people click it, you make money. Great, fantastic. Google makes money, you make money. Hopefully the advertisers are making money too, right? So this is all part of Google's ecosystem. If they create an AI that gets rid of that, say goodbye to that $16 billion. Now, some of that $16 billion, probably a good chunk of it, is from YouTube's revenue source, which is wildly profitable as well. But a good chunk of that, like 2 million publishers, are all involved in GDN that would suddenly go away overnight. So not only is Google taking on an additional $30 million in costs with this language learning model, plus the $100 million in OpEx, but they are also gutting like the entire GDN. They're gutting, or at least a significant portion of that $16 billion. So that brings that $55 billion down to 25, around 25 million. Then you take away that 16, now you're at like 9 billion. And like, yeah, 9 billion, still a lot of money, but there's another thing that is an issue here, right? What is one of the other main ways Google makes ad revenue? From search, right? If you're searching for something, there's people running Google AdWords, right? Every time someone clicks, that's Google gets money. And those are some premium clicks. Like, people really want to pay for that because of the search intent, right? So unless Google is able to completely reimagine how they actually serve ads in a ChatGPT like environment, not only would they be gutting GDN, they might be completely ruining their search ads. And pretty soon that $9 billion becomes a negative multiple billion-dollar company. And that is just not workable. The profit and incentive for Google to do this is just not there yet. They haven't imagined a future that works where they can monetize an AI search engine. I'm extremely pro AI, as if you couldn't tell at the beginning of this. I'm very into AI. I think everyone should use it. But and I think the use cases are dozens and dozens. I just don't think a search engine is a good use case for an AI, at least in its current incarnation. Now, I will say I do think AI will totally radically change search, probably in 5 years from now, maybe as long as 10 years from now. And the moment that happens, search is going to look very different than it does today. I think when AI truly gets to a place where the technology is optimized, scaled down, and can become profitable, we will most likely see search evolve away from a search engine directory, just like we saw evolve away from the physical yellow pages back in the late 90s, right? It, like, if you, yellow pages were the old form of people searching, at least for local services, and the new form is Google search. If you look at these two, the medium does not look the same at all, even though they both solve the same problem. One solves it much better, obviously. So I think when AI does get to a point where it is radically going to change everything, it will come in a format that looks completely different than we've ever seen before, that just works with AI. As it stands right now, with Bing installing Sydney, the hidden AI name of ChatGPT on Bing, it amounts to a really expensive parlor trick, in my view. It's cool, don't get me wrong. It's awesome, and it creates some very funny slash kind of disturbing moments with what Sydney's telling you to do. But overall, this is not helping the user. It's just like a cool aesthetic, cool marketing ploy. Now, let me get into the other argument that I haven't brought up yet, which is the elephant in the room. I mentioned them a few times, but that's Bing. So if someone really wanted to, And I think the Bing CEO, micro CEO, wants to, because he literally said he wants Google to dance based on what they're doing, then Bing is actually in a much more interesting position to really fight against Google and really disrupt Google and make Google have a very, very bad day, because Google makes up probably, like I said, like 90, 95% of Alphabet's revenue, whereas Bing makes up only around 5% of Microsoft's revenue. So what Microsoft could do if they really wanted Google to dance, they could plunge Bing into the red, just make it highly unprofitable, and use like AI language learning model to really blow people out of the water once it gets better. Right now, that's not happening, but they could do that. And Google would be hard pressed to fight against them, especially because Google knows if they did it, they're just going to lose money anyways, right? Because Bing might not care about losing money because they have all the other products and ecosystem of Microsoft. So Microsoft could turn Bing into the world's biggest loss leader like in history and not make any money, make it go in red, with the idea of destroying an Asian competitor such as Google, and eventually using that market share to grow the customer base throughout their whole suite of other products, right? That would be a very violent and aggressive move. And I think the CEO of Microsoft does kind of want to do that, or at least he definitely wants to be aggressive towards Google. And he's also said that from now on, the profit margins of search will continuously go downhill. So those are some really big fighting words from Microsoft. And that is a real threat to Google, because Google can't afford to become a language learning model search engine, at least not right now. It's just the economics doesn't make sense. But Microsoft could throw Bing into the red waters to bleed Google dry as a way of killing Google, right? So that is quite interesting. Now, I still don't think that will happen, because the cost of doing that is dramatic. And just because Microsoft is killing Google doesn't mean Microsoft isn't losing money. Like, losing billions of dollars a year to do this is pretty impressive, right? Like, to truly do a language learning model on Bing, not only would you get rid of all of Bing's profits just to try to support it, it doesn't make enough profit to support it. Like, that would be too big, especially if it reaches like Google status. It would start eating into Microsoft's profit more than what Bing produces. So more than that 5%. So Microsoft would have to steal their stomach, at least for a while, which would take a while to kill Google. It would be a slow withering, right? Google isn't just going to go out without a fight, but that could happen. Now, that last part I said, Google won't go out without a fight. I think Google most likely will win whatever war is being fought here between AI in the end, with whatever search engine happens to come out of after the dust all settles, if you will. Because I do think Google has the better AI models. I think they got caught surprised with their pants down with Microsoft partnering with OpenAI and putting it into Bing. I don't think Google expected that. And it all makes sense, right? Because OpenAI is a much smaller startup than Google or Microsoft. They can move fast, break things, all that kind of stuff, though breaking things with AI is a bit scary. Cue in the Terminator Skynet quotes. But of course, they move faster than Google would. Google didn't even want to come out publicly with an AI solution yet. They're still working on it very diligently, right? The only reason they even did it was because investors forced their hand, which ended up costing the investors like $1 billion. So there you go, investors. Like, yeah, I'm sure you have great advice, but just remember, you're not the expert usually on this type of stuff. But yeah, so I think in the end, Google will win. They would have to make like a dismal mistakes in response to Microsoft to lose. And at the same time, Microsoft would have to have perfect execution. Now, Google's already made a dismal mistake with introducing BART. So that's 1 point for Microsoft. But Microsoft loses that point because their AI is having existential meltdowns on the search engine. So like, they're still pretty even here, in my view, except for Bing is probably spending more money on it than Google in terms of the deployment, because they already have it a bit live. So those are some of my reasons why I think, what's coming for the search engines, what's happening, the case for it and the case against it. And to be honest, it's super fascinating to watch, especially watching these titans go at each other. There's a new matchup that just happened yesterday, I saw on LinkedIn. So HubSpot announced, I believe it's called ChatSpot. It's a AI based CRM. And then Salesforce has Einstein that they just launched as of today. I don't know if they launched it today, but I saw it today. And now those two are going at each other's throats. So we're seeing a lot of these big tech giants already trying to spear each other in this war with AI. So it's not exclusive to Google and Bing, though that is the most interesting one for our use cases for the most part. I think in the end, though, all this hype, all this emotional turmoil that we're going through, it will amount to a bunch of nothing for the most part, at least in the short term. I honestly don't think anything will change in a dramatic way where it gets rid of SEO. anytime soon within the next 5 years. So if you're a buyer looking at buying affiliate websites, you're going to be all right. 5 years is a long time in the internet world, right? Like we sell businesses that if everything goes the same, nothing changes, the profit remains the same, then you're looking to recoup your costs within 2 to 3 years. And then you'd have 2 years, again, if everything stays the same, of making crazy good cash flow on that investment where you basically couldn't get a better investment rate than anywhere. Now, obviously, businesses are highly risky assets. I wouldn't ever put money in that you weren't willing to lose. But still, that pricing ratio, even on a 5 year timeline, makes sense. And I honestly think by the time we get to that 5 year timeline, you will know enough of what you need to do that you should have already prepped, or there will be a new way to do it, or there will be more traffic sources as ChatGPT goes into everything. I have a friend who sold a few websites with us. He actually just posted on Facebook about AI within Skype. He was asking it some questions and it kept citing sources to websites to learn more. So there might actually be, instead of a death of a traffic channel, there might be a new traffic channel, the AI assistant traffic channel that you can be getting cited in by the AI, right? So it's not all doom and gloom. If you are looking to buy an affiliate site, I don't think you have anything to really worry about other than the classic stuff to worry about, obviously. And I think this whole thing will happen in such slow glacial paces that it probably won't blindside you as long as you're paying attention and really taking advantage of what the AI tools do have available to you. Now, I wrapped up this podcast with saying, let's say the worst comes to happen, the worst comes to pass. Content sites are dead, right? SEO is dead. So I should definitely not buy a website if I think that the worst shall come to pass. That makes sense. I get where you're coming from, but I think that is the wrong attitude. Here's why. So, search traffic is the highest quality traffic of anything. It is the absolute best. It's hard to scale because you have a limited amount, right? It's when people are searching to solve their problems. So you can't really scale it up like you could with, say, a Facebook ad or anything like that. But this is extremely high quality traffic that you can do so much stuff with. My SEO friends, they usually get stuck on just making display ads and affiliate sites, which is fine. Absolutely great business model. I love it. It's very set and forget once you get things kind of smoothed out, but you can do so much more with that. You could turn that content site into an e-commerce store. You could turn that site into one that does MRR. I have a friend that they have ads on their website, but if you pay him, I think it's like $5 a month, you can have a non-ads experience. That is wildly alien to most of my SEO friends because they don't build websites where people come back to that website. They build brochure websites that are just one and done and they never come back. But if you're focusing on building a site that's more like a magazine versus a brochure where people come back over and over and over again, now you can offer something like that, offer that kind of experience because you're building something of value, right? You can do all sorts of cool things with this search traffic more so than losing it to an ad click or to an affiliate offer click. Affiliate marketing is fantastic, but usually the person that wins in affiliate marketing is not the affiliate, is the person that owns the offer that has affiliates. So you could do this. You can buy content sites, do all this work, which is a lot of work, don't get me wrong. You could do it all and be way more sustainable, way more holistically viable than just your typical affiliate site. And because search traffic is dying in your mind that, oh, this is all going away, now is the time to double down. Because if that's true, if search engine traffic is really, really going away, then you are on the last stretch of being able to maximize, capture, and scale this type of traffic where you have a not long enough timeline where you can build your own walled garden. And I'll finish that off by talking about what a walled garden is. So this is the exact same thing like Apple, Facebook, everyone does. And for us, for most solopreneurs, most small-time digital entrepreneurs, that walled garden is your email list. Like it doesn't work in every affiliate niche. I know this, but general rule of thumb, if you're in a broad enough niche, email marketing is a fantastic way to hedge your bets against search engines. So that's one walled garden. Other thing is I've seen work is Facebook groups or paid communities on Discord. You can make either of them paid. It just depends on which channel your audience likes. Building out retargeting pixels, retargeting campaigns, all this kind of stuff. And of course, building offers that are beyond just being an affiliate. So beyond just like a ClickBank offer or an Amazon offer or a Google AdSense offer, right? Think about how you can make this into a bigger business where you own the data. The one of the worst parts about being an affiliate when you're trying to do something like this is you get the top half of the funnel. So you get all that data. You don't get the bottom half. And that's where the real gold lives. The bottom half is the conversion data, the LTV, the repeat buys, the upsells, all that kind of stuff. You as the affiliate don't get that, right? You only get the top of funnel stuff, traffic, conversions in terms of like, you don't get to see who converted, but it did convert, all that kind of stuff. So you get like the basic top of funnel stuff, which to most holistic marketers is often considered like vanity metrics. So you get like all the vanity metrics as an affiliate. You don't get all of the like juicy gold nugget stuff. And I'll give you an example of this. Is an idea. I have no idea if it would work, but this is an example of why owning data is important. Let's say you run a website all about local services, right? Like plumbers, installation, stuff like that. You put a pixel on there. You own all the websites, like what Luke and Nick from our previous episodes about the rank and rent model does. So you can put your own pixel on there. Say you had 400, 500 of these websites out there, which is a lot. I think Luke and Nick only have about 120, 150 each, which in of itself is a lot. Let's say you did that. What do you know about the people going to those sites? And this is a question. This is like a game I like to play with marketers. What do you know about your audience? So just like the most common denominator that is most likely true for everyone. Like, do you know? Like out there in the audience, are you listening? Answer on the YouTube video. What do you think? What's all common to the audience? But the answer is the common denominator across all these people visiting like plumbing in Birmingham or electrician in Chicago is that they're most likely homeowners. They probably all own a home. There will be a small percentage that don't, but most of them probably are homeowners. So now you have this pixel list of homeowners. You could build out a whole newsletter business talking about smart homes, talking about something about reducing your bills or refinancing your mortgage, all this type of stuff. You could build an entire brand using the data from here. And you wouldn't be able to do that unless you really controlled most of the funnel. Now, obviously, that's top of funnel stuff. So you could technically do that without owning the bottom of funnel stuff. But owning the bottom of funnel data is way more important. I think as time goes on, you owning more and more data to help you build more and more of your own walled garden is the true way you hedge against not just AI taking over search, but the way you hedge against everything. I'll wrap up this podcast as my AI rambling podcast. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you guys do, and I'll try to do more of these. But I'll wrap this up with one final story. So I was speaking at Affiliate World in Bangkok. I think this was 20. Sorry, I wasn't speaking. I was just attending. So this would have been, I think, 2017 or 2018, one of the first or second times I really went. And I met this guy. He gave a great speech. And he told me he had this website. It was this old viral news website, kind of like what BuzzFeed was back in his heyday. He owned it since around 2011, I think. And he really grew it like nuts. He just mastered social media virality. Well, that entire traffic strategy died. Most of us, BuzzFeed is almost like a distant memory. Like, oh, that's still a thing. Like, it's not very relevant to us today, right? That entire traffic strategy mostly died when organic social reach got reduced, right? But what he did was really, really smart. Throughout that entire time, he built a massive email list. His email list ended up being like close to 500 or 600,000 people. Absolutely wild numbers. And now, fast forward years after that traffic source is basically dead. Like some people are still doing it well, but it is not nearly as easy as it used to be. He still is making like six figures a year. I think he makes around 200K a year. And all he does is once a week, he sends out an affiliate offer to his email list. That's it. Like he hasn't updated the website, I think, since like 2013 or 2014. It's all just a newsletter at this point, and it's just offers. So there's not even anything like crazy valuable. So if you haven't done an email list, that is always my first step of creating a walled garden because it just works. That social viral style, like what BuzzFeed has, like I'm not saying is dead, but it's pretty dead in comparison to what's out there nowadays. Like that happened to him. He felt his main traffic source die away, but because he planned for it, he built an email list, built a walled garden. He's doing fine. In fact, he's probably doing better than pretty much everyone else in that space for the most part. Because based on my experience working with entrepreneurs, a lot of times we don't plan for these type of things. We just think the gold rush is forever, and then when it stops, we realize, oh shit, well, I should have done that for the last like 12 months, right? You probably are nodding your head like, yeah, I've been in that situation, right? So if you want to really hedge your bets, build that walled garden. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this it's like semi-rambling speech. If you would like to check out my article on AI to get a more structured way of looking at it, because I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker, then go ahead and check that out. A lot of my friends in the SEO world really enjoyed it. So if you're into SEO and you're afraid of AI and the future that it holds, go check out that article. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a review, follow us on Spotify, and share it, because that means the world that people really care about this podcast. When I was just at the event in Saigon, there was a bunch of people that came up to us talking about how they love the podcast, which is always really nice to hear, because when my team is creating content, it's kind of like creating content into the void. So we never know, like, are people listening? Like, we see the downloads, but we're not seeing the engagement. So I passed those comments on to my team, and they absolutely loved it. They were thrilled. So if you want to inspire my team, go and comment on our social media and tell them they're great. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace. Or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.